Audience and esteemed speakers. I'm Jiayuan, Carbon Asset Operations Specialist from Biosphere 3. Welcome to Biosphere 3 COP29 webinar series. Throughout the week at COP29, whether you join us online or offline, all videos will be available on our YouTube channel, Biosphere 3. The webinars will cover a range of important topics, including bamboo farming, low-carbon communities in BRICS countries, carbon offsetting in aviation, international green energy certificates in China. Today's session begins with our first topic, how technologies solve double counting problems in carbon markets, which is now live. To start, let me introduce our distinguished guest speakers. Federico, Interim CEO of CAD Trust, Chief Sustainability and Innovation Officer at ACT Group, and Vice Chair of ETA. Andrew, Managing Director of Carbonmark. Chris John, General Manager of the Biosphere 3 trading platform. Gordon, CEO of One Earth Fund US. Each speaker will deliver a keynote presentation over the next 40 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session. We begin with Chris, followed by Federico, Andrew, and Gordon. Let's dive in. Here we go.
So, I think we can start now. Today's host is Jiayuan from my team. And I think everyone is ready, so Jiayuan, can you start? Hello, everyone. I'm Chris from Biosphere 3 trading platform. So the topic today is using large language model to score the risk of double counting in carbon markets. So the initial question is why double counting is a problem. Actually, double counting brings in multiple challenges, including misrepresentational reductions. It will forcefully inflate the environmental benefits, undermining true impacts of climate initiatives. And then it may also compromise credibilities that investors and buyers will lose confidence in carbon market. And the third one is that it will discouragement for stakeholders. That without robust system, buyers and investors hesitate to participate in carbon markets. So ideally, there should be an integrated data system that can solve this problem. But in many cases, the regions or the registry is lacking the necessary technology, infrastructure, or governance to provide data efficiently. So this is where large language model can step in, and when these kind of registries are not interconnected. So because lacking the primary sources, large language model excels in analyzing diverse, often fragmented data sources, including public available data. It will review registries, reports, and even news articles to cross-check the information. And then to be more detailed, and it will review the auditor and verifier reports. These kind of independent audit records will provide insights of discrepancies. And to be more accurate, large language model can use kinds of unstructured database. Then it will transfer inconsistent formats into standard and comparable data sets. So based on these kind of sources, we think large language model can detect the likelihood of double counting. And so it will analyze the features such as project metadata by scrutinizing project names, descriptions, and stakeholders for overlaps. And then it will review the documentation consistencies by identifying missing fields, inconsistent methodologies, or vague baselines. And the third, it will look into the activity claims, such as highlighting discrepancy like missing cost or unusually high expenses compared to industry norms. And then in timeframes, it will also detect if similar projects claim credits for the same time period. And the last one, stakeholder history. It will assess the if the developer or regions with a track record of disputes or double counting. So based on this kind of analyze and scorings, there were multiple benefits for large language model. So we can see their benefits. We can achieve through large language model by proactive risk mitigation, because they can assess the potential risks before the credits are issued or registered. And it will bring in transparency throughout all the process to build trust among stakeholders. And then for scale of economy, large language model can handle large data sets, so making it suitable for global markets. And the last but not least, it's much more efficient to reduce the cost and efforts of manual validation, allowing human oversight to focus on high-risk projects. So, in summary, I think we see double counting is a significant challenge in carbon markets. Large language model can provide a scalable, efficient, and transparent solution to mitigate this risk. That's all about my report. Thanks for your attention. So let me forward back to Jiayuan.
Okay, thanks a lot for Chris' insightful presentation about large language model application and avoiding double counting problems in carbon markets. That's really an inspiring thought to utilize an advanced technology. Yes. So now let's move over to our next speaker, Federico. Federico, are you ready to share your idea with us?
Yeah. I just want to. I think that what I want to share today is about my experience with CAD Trust, or what's called Climate Action Data Trust, and why that's a blockchain-based. It's a project that I want to share the features about. I think they relate to what Chris has just mentioned. So 1 minute of history. So Climate Action Data Trust, or CAD Trust, is in fact a spin-off of a broader ecosystem called Climate Warehouse of the World Bank. And the spin-off has been done in collaboration with AITA, which is the Emission Trading Association, and the government of Singapore. So a few years ago, they said, okay, why don't we create, in fact, an NGO, a non-for-profit organization, to support climate action data and make sure that those are functional. Now, what that is in practice? So you think about the umbrella of a mix of voluntary carbon market being scattered across different registries. Chris was quickly mentioning that indirectly. You think about a mix of the Paris Agreement, which will somehow manage the transactions across countries and players through the countries of different carbon markets across the world. They all have a different taxonomy, a different way to calculate things. They have a different registry very, very often in place. So there is a high risk of not having clarity on what's going on, right? Especially when those things overlap, right? National registry, voluntary registry, and overlaps of projects, etc., etc. So the CAD Trust tried to do two simple things. One was, okay, why don't we define let's say, common taxonomy, or a language that we all have in common. So we don't believe that the world will go towards a centralized ecosystem, because that's not good for creativity. It's not good for not even in line with the spirit of the Paris Agreement, or the spirit of the Paris Agreement. But we think about, okay, why don't we define at least a minimum common denominator, like a common language across all the different carbon market initiatives across the world. And once you have defined this common taxonomy, this common language, We can also think about having a data layer where we can somehow feed data from each given carbon registry through this common language, so we can see kind of what's going on in any given registry across the world. And the idea was not to have data about anything which is happening anywhere, because otherwise will become impossible to create a language or a taxonomy, and that's not even the purpose of the CAD Trust. The idea is, whether we create a taxonomy which is powerful enough to be able to give us tools that we can assess what's going on in the carbon market, but still flexible enough to allow different initiatives to still run their course. So the idea was, okay, we end up having, I think, 85 different fields and those connections with the VERAs and gold standards and those main registries already done. And there is a very complex governance ecosystem, because taxonomy in carbon market is not something that you can do only one time in your life. It's a constant evolution. Many things has happened ever since. And now with the Article 6 negotiated at COP, a few new features will definitely come into play, with national registries coming up, international registries, which are part of the UNFCCC mandate. So the complexity is actually growing. So once we have this common taxonomy and this data layer where you have data fed through connections, right, through APIs or different form of connectivities to the different registries, you can create this center place where you can look what's going on. One important feature worth mentioning is that was a blockchain based, and the reason why blockchain based is because for two main reasons. One, because you want to have an immutable ledger and distributed ledger, because you don't really want anybody to own the data, because it's very sensitive in international agreement to have a specific player or even a specific country having this sort of a source of truth, right, of what's going on in the world, unless maybe the UN could play that role potentially. But then we felt, there's no need to political debate where those data are hosted. Why don't we just create a distributed ledger? So that kind of solve the problem, because everybody has access to everything, right, as part of the technology. And that was the bridge on how technology is solving an actual problem on ownership, not to mention, of course, the reliability and the auditability of the process. And then the last thing I want to say is, okay, but what can you do if you have this common taxonomy? So you're defining a common set of data that everybody somehow can engage with, and you have this common place where some of those data are somehow plotted into. What can you do with it? And that's, the CAD Trust is a public good kind of initiative. It's meant to be, okay, what is this common base data that everybody needs to have? So we are not taking care of transaction, pricing, volumes, because those are very sensitive and has to do with private sector initiatives or country level initiative. We only wanted to have the key core data, which allows to think about integrity, think about the ecosystem being robust and safe. So then the last step with this logical flow from defining a taxonomy and having the connections and the blockchain base to have the actual data repository. The third step is, okay, but what is possible to do with the data? And CAD Trust is a public good, as I mentioned. So this third step is left to the world, right, to potentially use and define. But we are also kind of incubating some ideas, also in a way to prove the existence of and the value of CAD Trust in the first place. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One is, which is still in the making, and all of these are kind of in the making as I'm talking about. One example that we are testing is under CORSIA, because CORSIA, so the airline mechanism, there is not such a thing like a common registry. CORSIA has approved a set of registries, and it's part of their process to do a double counting check all the time there is a transaction or a registration, sorry, not a transaction under CORSIA. So CAD Trust could be a way to simplify extremely the process on how a registry can go through the CORSIA double check, right? But you can think also from a voluntary integrity point of view, everything which has to do with double counting, not in its details part, but in its core part. The CAD Trust is meant to be core, simple, essential. That can be facilitated through CAD Trust. CAD Trust doesn't do anything. It's just the data, and the service layer is up to any of you. If you have ideas and want to use the data, we're more than happy to engage, right? Because it's the core public good element is the data repository and the language and the common taxonomy as such. Another use case, maybe I can use it to wrap it up, really interesting because now it's linked to COP. Under Article 6 of Paris Agreement, of course, different countries can transact mitigation outcomes. And some countries want to try already to establish a potential partnership with another country under Article 6, but they don't have yet a registry in place in order to do the actual transaction. But the registry is nothing different than just allowing them to understand what's going on in the country. And then we say, okay, but why do we need the registry in the first place? Why don't we use the existing international standards for now? And you use CAD Trust to take the snapshots that you need to have in order for your country to be able to provide the report that the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement forces you to do towards the UNFCCC. So you as a country can use CAD Trust to kind of having a view of what's going on in your country, and therefore having accounting kind of analysis of what's happening in your country, even though you are not yet having a registry, which the purpose of actually of seeing what's going on in your country, because you can use CAD Trust to see what's going on through international registries, any given carbon project happening in your country, so you can change and adjust your carbon accounting accordingly. So this is just two examples, the double counting and Article 6 facilitation of many other potential use cases that CAD Trust can do. And the overall power of CAD Trust are in fact this governance that makes sure that it's a very complex governance where countries are part of the board, and the same as very standard at the registries. So there's an ecosystem that agrees on this taxonomy. And the second thing is that it's public goods and meant to be and with blockchain based. So in a way, everybody can leverage right on this transparency as such. That's what CAD Trust is in a nutshell. And so back to you.
So thank you very much, Federico. That's really an impressive presentation. A common taxonomy in carbon market and data fed can be definitely beneficial. And the reason for using blockchain is security and credibility to build a safe ecosystem as well. And I think Andrew will be very familiar with blockchain as well. Let's listen to Andrew's demonstration about blockchain technology usage. Hey, Andrew, are you ready?
Great to be here, everybody. And yeah, it's an interesting ecosystem on the blockchain side of things in the carbon market. I think a few of us here have already worked together on some things, but it's certainly a growing space. And obviously, CAD Trust is one of the pioneers there to really leverage a decentralized system as a data warehouse for the market. And there's a few reasons that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. So what I'd like to do in my time here, I'm going to speak a bit about what Carbonmark does and why we chose blockchain technology. And then I'll dive into some of the interesting use cases that I see emerging here that, in our opinion, will help, one, reduce the risk of double counting or double issuance, but will also just provide greater fidelity into what is going on in the market itself. So if I begin just about Carbonmark. So we are essentially a platform for facilitating the trade of carbon credits. We've built infrastructure to connect to various registry systems where these credits can be brought online. When they're in our platform itself, these credits are represented as a blockchain-based asset. And there's some pretty important reasons for that. Essentially, when you take an asset and you move it onto the blockchain in the way that we do, you are essentially making it programmable. Now, when you make an asset programmable, you can start to automate different processes around its usage. So that can relate to things like the purchase of a carbon credit, the automated retirement of a carbon credit, the fractionalization of a carbon credit into different units than would be normally shown on a registry, 10 kilogram retirements, 50 kilogram retirements, et cetera, and still have it linked to that original asset. You can just start to send live data back to the registries themselves based on what's going on with those credits when they're purchased, retired, all of that pricing information, the volumes transacted, and so on, can all be made available. And because we're a blockchain-based system, we've found it quite intuitive, really, to already utilize some of the data that the CAD Trust provides, for example. So our content management system is fed in by the API related to projects on eco-registry through the CAD Trust. And then this data is something that we can show on our project pages. Concurrently, we are looking at providing real-time insights on what's going on within our blockchain ecosystem to other data providers in the market. Players you can imagine like Allied Offsets, MSCI, et cetera. Because when you have all of these different trades and carbon retirements occurring on a distributed ledger system, like the one that we leverage, you really have real-time data insights. And I think for those of us that have been in the market for quite some time, we've grown to appreciate things like the ecosystem marketplace reports. This is a fantastic data set, but I think that we can do better in terms of the timing when we receive the data, because a lot of times these types of reports rely on retrospective, survey-based data collection. And that's fine, but we're not really getting the whole picture necessarily, depending on what our sample is, and it's retrospective, right? It's not real time. On the other side of things, when you have these assets being traded and facilitated on the blockchain system, you really do have real-time insights to the second of what is going on. And you can pull that data in, you can showcase it in any variety of ways that you'd like to. So that's really the powerful piece of the system. So with that, I thought I would dive in a bit deeper on why blockchain itself on this piece. So there's been a few phrases that were already mentioned. We heard about immutability, so the fact that the transactions are actually permanent, they can't be tampered with after. But there's also some pieces around enhanced security in our view. So records on a blockchain are essentially encrypted. They can't be altered. Really enhances the integrity and the security of the data, because you don't have a central party that can go in and potentially change the types of transactions and the history of the ledger of transactions. There's also a piece around reduced risk. So because they're taking place in a distributed system, it reduces the overall burden on an individual or central authority to actually operate the system. If you consider blockchains like Ethereum, for example, or even Polygon, these are networks that have had pretty much continuous uptime, which we know there are risks when you have something running on a central server. Wherever it is, you might have downtime, you might have data corruption, et cetera, et cetera. So a distributed system really helps mitigate some of those risks. The other piece is the transparency. Because transactions are recorded on a public ledger, not only are they permanent and immutable there, but you have visible transaction histories. And I think this is actually going to be really important when we start to look at things with the Paris Agreement. When you have ITMO transfers between countries and so on, you really want a globally distributed system that's tamper-proof, that's fully transparent, that anyone at any time can audit. And that's the promise of a decentralized system. And so I don't think it's any surprise, actually, that the UNDP released a framework, an open source digital public good for a national carbon registry that was blockchain-based. And I think we can start to envision a future where we have the national carbon registries that are running on these types of systems. They're fully interoperable together. You can have the assets transferred between registries or between exchanges that are enabled and so on, and have it very interconnected, interoperable, and running on infrastructure rails that are fully transparent and traceable. That's going to be the key thing here. So why else should someone be caring about blockchain, let's say? There's two other pieces, and I think I know I'm almost at time, I believe. So I'll go quick through these last two. But one is in regards to DMRV and automations around credit issuance. So there already are companies that are leveraging DMRV systems that may be satellite monitoring. There's others that are doing sensors related to CO2 concentrations in seawater, for example. But in any case, this data is automatically streamed in to our blockchain-based system. And then what can happen here is that based on that data from the project, you can automatically issue the carbon credits directly to the system itself. Now, again, when you validate methodologies like this and you have the DMRV system set up, you of course want third parties to look at the overall system and say, yes, okay, the flow and the process here from taking that data in and issuing a carbon credit, that makes sense, it's cogent, et cetera. But once you have that set up, you can actually start to automate some of the data collection pieces here. Now, the other piece with DMRV is that you could actually pull this data in to credits that are on the blockchain that were maybe issued by one of the traditional registries. and start to add an additional layer of certification on top of them. Just an additional data layer live being streamed in from these DMRV sources to the credits, so that if you purchase those credits or retire them, you have all that data available as well. So it just gives you additional assurances there. So that's one piece. And then the other is around just automating the usage through something like an API. Again, I think there's a lot of new use cases out there for credits, a lot of integration opportunities into other fintechs where transactions are proven to be carbon neutral, where users that are purchasing a product can make them carbon neutral just by clicking a button and having the whole purchase and retirement process automated and so on. And so we believe that there is merit to a more tech-enabled carbon market. We think there's a lot of unlocks in terms of scaling demand for new use cases. And we also think that essentially this technology provides a way to make a more secure, transparent, and ultimately scalable market in the future. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Really thanks for your presentation, Andrew. For real-time data insights and transparent systems, and automatically managed carbon credits, Carbonmark did build an infrastructure based on blockchain and offer API to get market connected. Now, let's move on to our next speaker. Gordon will share his experience of project development in terms of procurement and methodology. Hey, Gordon, are you ready to share with us?
Good day, everyone. Hopefully the audio connection is good. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet Federico for the first time and Jinyan as well. Just want to, I think, maintain the momentum that Federico and Drew have built within the discussion and build on some of the things that Chris brought up as well. So very quickly, background, Wonder Fund is a nonprofit based in the United States. We hope to have global positive impact through the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions through waste diversion that is converted through biological means. Very simply stated, that could be compost, that could be insect cultivation, but those are our two primary focuses. We've been around since 2018. Had been working through various registries and various market opportunities. And so we're very excited for what's happened here just in the last year. And I've had the privilege of start to work with Carbonmark, which is very well aligned with our perspective. The reason we selected waste diversion through biological means was precisely based on the foundations that I think have already been addressed here. Every market is founded on trust. If there's no trust in the market, then the value of the market erodes rapidly and eventually disappears. So trust is invalid. Trust in a market must also be based on data accuracy of knowing that what you're trading or buying is actually what you intended to purchase and has the value that you decided to purchase. And so the reason that I think this aligns with our operating model is waste diversion has a very good alignment with that because it is a quantifiable and degrading resource. And so it is ideal for the technological improvements that we've seen in the current market that allow for what we call batches of waste that can be quantified and then provided unique identifications. And then they are processed through the various different biological processes. So whether it be traditional compost or whether it be different types of insect or other animal cultivation, our focus is on the black soldier fly, which we think is the ideal animal to do that. But it can be through various mechanisms. At the end of that, you have a quantifiable batch of waste that is processed through a known and verifiable process that results in a verifiable output. And that is, I think, Drew would probably align a ideal mechanism for using a blockchain because it's a unique batch with unique output that then becomes a unique identified asset that is then marketable into the market. And I think that's where the future is in terms of providing the accuracy and the trust that buyers and sellers are looking for especially across the international market, where there are opportunities that have unfortunately been exploited in the past, and other types of offset trades that this would help solve. And as Drew's rightly pointed out, the data becomes incorruptible, it becomes protected, and it becomes auditable, so that if there are any questions that someone who had any suspicion around the trades that are the offsets that they are purchasing is able to backtrack that and knows that on this date, this amount of waste was collected, it was validated through a known methodology, and was then processed accordingly. And at the end of it, it had an output that is both measurable and aligned with the expectations. One of the processes that we've also started taking in terms of monitoring that aligns with this is actually tagging batches using RFID and other ways of maintaining integrity of the waste being diverted and the quality of the waste, so that when it goes through the process at the end of it, and as we develop the project and submit the project to the marketplace, everyone has clear transparency into what was actually processed, where it came from, where it was actually converted from a waste to an asset, and has a clear methodological emissions standard that can be validated, so that if weights or quantities don't line up, that can be audited as well. So from our perspective, it's critical to maintain that data integrity. I think the other component of it as well, that Drew may have touched on, but just to go a little bit deeper into, is it also accelerates the verification and validation process that is so critical to offsets and the credibility there. So the ability to more rapidly move through the verification and validation process by using these technological means reduces the amount of physical auditing that drives up cost, especially for developers like us. Whereas with other types of previous regimes, that was very difficult and expensive, and eventually, and in some cases, the trades did not make economic sense. But with the ability to use technology and the ability to create unique and secure identifications for the resources that, I should say, for the assets that are being developed by project developers, regardless of where they are in the world, provides a significant amount of positive cost impact, especially for our partners in developing countries, where there is a unfortunate perverse incentive. The further away you are from a verification and validation entity, the more costly the project is to develop. The more costly the project is to develop, the lower the required profit that makes the additionality of required by the methodology to work. So what we've got in a number of cases is a cycle that drives a project. So with that, I think we're kind of running up on time. Sorry, my mic went off for a second. Like I was saying, with that, hopefully that provides a little bit more clarity and additional reinforcement to the points that Federico and Drew brought up in terms of the value of this new and improving market, especially from a developer's perspective, who we were specifically oriented on avoiding the risk of double counting by creating quantifiable, degradable, meaning that it could not be shifted or double counted types of assets that were converted into resources that were also quantifiable. So inputs in quantifiable, outputs quantifiable, and now with the blockchain, that creates a immutable and uncorruptible mechanism for accounting for that, so that in the end increases the trust of the market. And the higher the trust of the market, the greater the value of the market across international boundaries. So thanks very much, and open for questions.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Gordon. The blockchain can definitely make the quantification and developing process of carbon assets credible and transparent. So that's all. Our speakers all finished their keynote presentation, and we should move forward to the last session, the 10-minute Q&A. I will collect some questions from the audience and our colleagues. The first one is forward to Federico. How will costs be effective when project proponents apply such a solution to develop their carbon credits? Okay, Federico, can you answer? You can share your ideas about it.
Thanks, yeah. Okay. So for now, talk about CAD Trust in this case, right? For CAD Trust now, we don't have yet a financing model, if you like, of what we are building. Everything has been done through philanthropy. The idea is a lot of philanthropists are interested in having core data as a public good, as part of their mission. So for now, all the activity I mentioned about taxonomy, creation, governance, and the data repository layer and everything around that has all been done with philanthropic fundings. In the future, obviously, you might want to have a model where potentially some revenue or revenue financing stream might happen, and that could be by the user of data. So whoever is using data from CAD Trust could support CAD Trust existence as such. But the idea that we have, or I have, is to have CAD Trust as lean as possible. And then everything else, so the use cases around CAD Trust to be different ventures. They can be public or private in nature and therefore self-funded. So the idea is to not to have a fee that somehow get charged to standards and then directly to project proponents, but more try to be as lean as possible as a way to, as an enabler, right, for the industry to work more effectively. So that's been so far the model.
Okay, thanks for your answer, Federico. This one is forward to Gordon. The question is, if a method designed to avoid double counting is already set up, how to make it effective or convincing?
Thanks for the question. The methodology that is currently in place as accepted is the ACM 0022. We are currently working on an updated methodology for black soldier fly cultivation, as well as using the Climate Action Reserve 2013 version for compost. Both of those have monitoring requirements built in and have quality control mechanisms that require the waste inputs that go into either of those processes, whether it be traditional composting or through insect cultivation, are measured, and those measurements are calibrated. And then on the output side, the outputs of that waste diversion are then quantified as well. So the methodologies have the monitoring quality control mechanisms built in, so that overall quality assurance of the credits that are being brought to market are validated. And so that with that process, as stated, creates the opportunity for more rigorous, auditable, and accurate information to be recorded and maintained. And that used to be through the more traditional registry process, but now with the improvements with blockchain and also with large models that can validate data sets, the methodologies have only been reinforced by the technology. So they've, through no deliberate mechanism, but only, I think, through sort of logic, the methodologies that were developed before the technologies are still not only held up, but have been reinforced by the improved technological data integrity mechanisms that we've discussed here today.
So, really thanks for your answer, Gordon. The next one is forward to Andrew. The question is, how can we motivate boutique mechanisms to connect their data to our blockchain? Can you share your ideas with us, Andrew?
Thank you for that question. I guess I would probably break that up into, let's say, registry data, and then perhaps DMRV companies that are working with project developers. So on the registry side, there's been a number of registries that have already connected data and provided some sort of interoperable solution to blockchain platforms like ours. ICR, for example, which is a registry that actually runs on the Polygon blockchain. You have Eco Registry, Pure Earth has a connection in place. And I think we will see some movement from some of the other major registries in the coming months. But that's really the first key piece, because the registries are the ultimate source of truth, you could say. They're the ones that are actually issuing the assets and tracking retirements. So if you then want to have more the advantages that we've all spoken about earlier for having assets on the blockchain, for having carbon credits on the blockchain, then you need to have a solution to connect that data from what's happening on the blockchain to the registry system itself. Now, when you're going from a completely so-called Web 2 based system to a Web 3 one that's blockchain enabled, there are some challenges there, right? There's challenges because there's certain functionality that is enabled when these assets are on the blockchain that doesn't always exist in the Web 2 registry systems. So I'd mentioned carbon credit fractionalization before, essentially whether retirements can occur for sub-ton units. That's something that's fully enabled on the blockchain, of course, but not all registries have that. So you have to kind of then create some sort of bespoke solution to batch retirements when they occur on a fractionalized basis on the blockchain to then have that data, secured on the carbon registry itself. So that's one side of things. Generally, I would say, I think just, registries that are emerging right now, there's some interesting, like novel, more carbon removal focused registries. Some of them are running on blockchain systems. And I would say that over the next couple of years, perhaps we see some of the other traditional registries that have been around for many, many years at this point, may also transition their infrastructure to a blockchain-based system. And I think there'll be a number of advantages there. So then the last piece of this question, the other side of it would just be like DMRV companies themselves. How can we motivate them to connect their data to the blockchain? I mean, look, we have a module on our platform that allows us to take API data from third-party sources and essentially pair it with the carbon credits that are on our platform. I think when you open that up, and especially if you can create another revenue stream for them, whereby similar to the carbon credit rating agencies, they would be paid if people wanted that data associated with the credits that they had in their system. So if I have 1,000 tons from some project, it's on a project page, and we want to pair those credits with, let's say, satellite monitoring data around the deforestation rates in the project area, maybe we as a platform pay this data provider, or potentially the buyers of those credits themselves would pay for those credits, and a royalty would also go to the DMRV provider. And because you would have this smart contract system with these so-called tokenized assets, or the assets that are on the blockchain, you could make that fully automated in terms of the royalty payment. In a similar manner, if you have trading of credits, you can actually send a royalty back to the original project developer themselves. And in this way, even though there's a lot of margin taken by intermediaries in the market currently, you can ensure that a portion of that margin actually goes to the folks that are on the ground developing these projects. Which I know that's a bit of a tangent from the original question, but I think it's related to the data piece here, and is worth exploring.
So thanks a lot for your answer, Andrew. That's a really impressive answer. So the last question is also to Federico. The question is how to lower the cost that if we need the real-time data interconnecting different registries.
I'm trying to understand the question. So the idea is to have connectivity through APIs, and at the moment what we're trying to do with CAD Trust is that the registries, the big ones as much as the more innovative ones that Andrew just mentioned, they're all part of CAD Trust, and they allow us to have API connectivity or other form of engagements with them, which is relatively efficient. It's not super efficient, so we're also looking at doing things better. But for now, our core of focus now is not really on the efficiency side yet, but more on the political side and the use cases side, so the value proposition. So at the moment, the costs are not super material compared to the potential value that you can gain out of having transparency, trust, and a better use case for action data that comes from carbon projects. So now we are focusing mostly on having the registries on board, so we can easily improve anything, having them politically involved or practically involved, having connectivity as efficient as reasonably possible at this stage. And then focus on the use cases to make sure that there is actually use of the data, and therefore there is a value creation that justifies the whole ecosystem in the first place. So that's a little bit the philosophy that's happening at the moment. So less on cost optimization, which is not super material yet, and more on value creation, if that makes sense.
So thanks for your answer, Federico. That's all for today.